Blackballed, 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 Blackballed. What is up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed. This year has been a year of religious examination for a lot of us. It's been a year of covering things like cults here on Blackballed and on the Dean Blundell Network. And through the investigation and the interviews that we've done with the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, we have been interested in stories that cover other religious groups, other religious extremism, and other religious educational facilities that may have been guilty of abuse upon their students and even some of their faculty. And one of those stories came out of Saskatchewan when a young woman became part of a class action lawsuit when they made allegations against the Legacy Christian Academy, which is a Christian church inside Saskatchewan. And we had her on a guest earlier on this year, and there have been some developments, and we would like to talk to her again, so we decided we would. And her name is Caitlin Erickson. Caitlin, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. There's no real way to sort of dance around why you're here, but I want to, if you could, after you made the allegations against the Christian Legacy Academy, after other people came forward with their own allegations, what have you experienced since then? And I kind of want to know, the bigger question is it still worth it?
So it wasn't until we went public to the media, and we 2nd of 2022 is when the first article had dropped to police a year prior about my it was when it went public that some pretty bizarre, I obviously expected a degree of harassment. I thought it would be online, majority of it. But yeah, there's harassment, and as you were made aware, and there was a fire at my house. So been dealing with that for the last few weeks. I don't think I've fully processed the whole vandalism, to be completely honest. However, worth it. Yeah, it still is. Intimidating are not something that, in this case, it's been tried. There's been people who have tried to come forward, expose what's been going on. There was people that tried in the 90s. There's people that tried in the 80s. They were met with a lot of harassment. They were met with a lot of being sent about them, a lot of slander. And, I feel this like thankfulness, but this duty to the people that have tried to expose the things going on at Christian Center, Academy, now rebranded to Legacy and Mile 2 Church. And they just weren't successful. They were not being heard. They weren't taken seriously. And those people's stories are valid, even though they weren't listened to at the time. I feel this kind of duty of responsibility to, everybody, to these people that came before, and they tried to do what we're doing now, but just, weren't same support.
Yeah, and it's and the bravery that it takes. I don't think people really understand. Like your life often gets thrown, you know, turned upside down. There's a certain level of ostracization that attempts to happen, especially if you're still connected with anybody that's connected to the school or to the religious group. And I just want to show this quick headline from last month. Saskatchewan advocate Caitlin Erickson's home vandalized, fire lit inside. Erickson is a former student of what is now called the Legacy Christian Academy, which has been embroiled in allegations of physical and emotional abuse. What about the case? Where are we at with the case? Is it just sort of grinding really slowly through the courts, or what's the process been like?
So there's two separates in the justice system that are kind of working simultaneously. So we have the criminal process where there's over 50 police reports with criminal complaints of lens that have gone on and abuse, and at the same time we have the cloud with the courts, a civil suit on August 8th, and is chugging along. Everybody's been served, was not found and he's actively evading service. Justice Curry here in Saskatchewan ruled that he was evading service, so they allowed. So in the court's eyes, everyone's been served. Also had a judge assigned to our civil case as well. So the Chief Justice assigned. Things are moving along, and on the civil side, today, some new defendants to the lawsuit. So you're catching me. So yeah, we've announced 3 new names, and this is from the intakes from students that have come into the law firm that have identified abuse. And today we also announced that we are adding the government assistant to our lawsuit. So,
oh wow, you're adding the government of Saskatchewan to the lawsuit. And is that based on the fact that they were given warnings and they never did anything about it, or that they allowed a religious institution to become accredited? What's the main focus on the province?
The updated statement of claim is very lengthy. There's a lot of willful failings of the government that are listed from their own policies, failed to maintain basic minimum standards in this school. They've also, there's other things that have gone on since we've started this process, and things that have been, I would say, delivered, to the media by the Minister of Education, Dustin Duncan, and information request. We've been able to see the information firsthand, has spoken about in the press, and see that he's actually lied. So, or he didn't know. As the Minister of Education, you have a responsibility when you're to make sure you have the information. So there's a lot there on the surface of things, but there's a huge failing for many years from the government in regards to this school.
It's amazing how governments remain often beholden to these religious groups, or they're too timid to sort of take them on. It's happened over and over again. It almost doesn't matter what religion it is. It's usually Christian religion. I have a funny feeling that if your school was a madrasa or an Islamic school, that they probably would have done something a long time ago. Just a guess. But it seems to me that the Christian schools and the Christian groups and the cults, anything that has to do with Jesus, they get left alone and they get hit with kid gloves if they get hit at all, but they mostly get protected. Does that say something to you about what Christianity means in this country, or what it doesn't mean?
I mean, I can't really speak. I can just speak to what I know. I am born and raised in Saskatchewan. We, province. We are referred to sometimes as, the Bible Belt of Canada. There is a core of conservatives here, because there's a lot of conservatives that don't even agree with, the failings that have gone on. There is some political ties to this school and the current government, the church and students in it campaigning for different conservative views and different things. So there are some political ties here. I do feel it was really bizarre, I guess, and maybe I was a bit naive that when we as students, when we presented this to the government and said, hey, these are some on for, 4 decades now. And we really thought that the government, this is heinous because there was so much evidence there, and be like let down, let's figure this out. And we weren't met with that. We were met in gaslighting and wrong information in the press. A good example is I had sent an email to the minister in the media. We've never received any email correspondence. And I said, okay, here you passed on the actual email where the minister's office emailed me back telling us.
Wow.
So, it started with that. And then I was like, up here where this person isn't telling the truth. And then, the Minister of Education, different times between, now and August, and had 3 inspections every year on this school since we gave it funding in 2020. We received those inspection reports, and that is false. The Minister of Education, in their own government inspection reports, they identified that this school did not to even be funded. And it's said and documented several times at the time that this school had some very, very serious issues. And there was a new superintendent a couple years later that had come along, and basically that off the inspection reports. So it's pretty bizarre going on. And we as students, I've met with the Minister of Education twice. I met with him. The man didn't say anything. He literally sat there in silence the whole time. I talked and 2 other former students talked. Said nothing. And even when we asked thinking, we get that this is a lot to process. Can you tell us what's going on there? He didn't say anything. And then asked the Minister of Education, you said in the press that you balance and parents' choice or human rights and rights of Saskatchewan. And she said, first of all, did you mean that? And secondly, and he looked at her and said, thank you for your question. And that was it.
Wow. What's his name?
So Minister Dustation Minister. We had a second meeting with Minister Duncan. I asked him, I said, I'm a parent. You're a parent. Where do you send your kids to school? Duncan looked at me and said, I send my kids to, and I don't want to say it just out of respect for his children, but he sends in the province of Saskatchewan. So one of the students that was with said, okay, so are you going to acknowledge your bias to this situation then? Send your children into a Christian school. Is that why you're not dealing with this? He's like, you could say the same thing if I sent my kids to a public school. And I said, right, but public schools have proper education as bringing this QIS school to a public school, and they have certified teachers. Teachers are held accountable by the regulatory board. Now, because the Minister of Education has to teach at this school, they can't be regulated by anybody. They can't be regulated by a regulatory. So therefore, it is the government's responsibility to regulate them. And they've not for decades.
Yeah, that's amazing. And good on you guys for grilling him like that, because, it's not that, first of all, I can't even think of a province or a time in Ontario's history, because I live here, where you guys would even be allowed to sit down with the education minister. So I'm a little, it's funny, I'm of two minds. One is that, okay, well, he sat down with you guys, that's great. And then on the other hand, he didn't really tell you anything. And then he got defensive, There is a hunger that I've noticed in this country in this year, mostly because I'm focused on this kind of subject matter, for justice when it comes to religious institutions facing the music for some of the harm that they've done to students and to young people especially. I think I'd like to know if you first of all, have you looked at any of the other Christian organizations in the province, like the stuff that I've been doing with the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, and just to see if there's any comparisons, to see if there's any notes that seem to be hitting the same?
I'm coming public with this. I've had a lot of different, people that are, experienced trauma growing up from varying different, religious backgrounds. So there's been a lot of people reach out to me, and a lot of people, sharing their stories, and that seems to be consistent is just really the lack of almost to proceed with criminal charges when it has to do with the church. Even when there's case law established, they still really following the criminal code and laying a charge. And seeing that, firsthand in some people's stories, information, they reported things to police, over the years. And it's not, some is, in the last decade, they've reported things, but that seems to be, and even when there is case law, it's really bizarre to me that not being followed through with, and there seems to be some sort of fear. But at our justice system in the province of Saskatchewan, you see a very now we have the SAS party in power. You see a very top-heavy SAS party partisan people sitting at the top of the chain there in the justice system. It didn't used to be like that. Even 15 years ago, there generally was people from to have a more balanced justice system, and those are very, very unbalanced. And I think with the whole in pursuit of justice, people are really waking up to these systematic failures are not just in these institutions, but they're at government, all different types of government. So I think a lot of more people are aware of that.
Yeah, I think so too. I was making a couple phone calls regarding the whole thing in Maple Creek with the Plymouth Brethren, and I called. I won't say the person's name yet because I'm still working on putting some stuff together for a show. But I called one of the government officials, one of the representations, or one of the representatives from the Maple Creek area, and I called their office and said. And it was an assistant that answered, and I said, "Yeah, I would like to talk to, Minister such and such, about the Plymouth Brethren." And they mistakenly thought I was calling from the Plymouth Brethren, and they said, "The minister really, or not the minister, the member of Parliament really enjoyed the last time that he met with you and your religious and the Plymouth Brethren group. They thought I was calling from them. And I was like, oh,
wow.
that's interesting. That's an interesting little giveaway. Why are you meeting with this cult and what are you doing with this? Because they are an actual cult. This is, in a lot of ways, it's just a different kind of heinousness what you're dealing with, because they're recognized as an educational institution. And I'm just, I'm still floored that in 2022 we were dealing with this kind of thing. Is there anything, and I'll let you go after this, is there anything that you hope to happen other than the way the case is expedited so that it doesn't take forever? But is there anything else that you kind of hope sort of takes place or happens out of this story, out of this case, that can like make people have a greater confidence in the province in the future? Like, what has to happen as far as you're concerned?
Well, I think we've identified where, these QIS schools kind of do their thing very unregulated. And today in the press conference that I was participating in, as I said, is I was like, I am actually very saddened. Like, as somebody who is proud of Saskatchewan and, proud to be a prairie girl, I am very saddened that we had to add the government to this lawsuit in order to affect. I mean, I'm a single mom from a small town in Saskatchewan. I'm a nobody. Officials that are sitting in positions that have the power to make than it was for us growing up, and they just don't want to do it because it affects.
Yeah. Plus, you have 1,000 kids.
I do. The number's growing. It's 1,000, 4,000. Yeah.
Listen, I thank you very much for joining us. I'm sorry, I almost got the time. Well, almost. I did get the time mixed up. I thought I was supposed to wait till midnight. It's 11:41 here now. I was supposed to start it in 20 minutes, I thought, but thankfully I woke up from my little nap and I contacted you and you set me straight, and I'm glad you did. And I wish you well in your fight. And thank you again for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you.
You too. Thanks, Caitlin. Caitlin Erickson. Her audio was a little bit choppy. That's okay, though. I think we got most of what she was saying. The evil Safari glitch took over once again. I am going to be following that story very carefully because I think that it is one of those touchstone stories in this country. One of several happening right now. The Maple Creek Plymouth Brethren Christian Church case is still being investigated. There have not been any charges laid, I believe. I'll get an update from Cheryl Hope. Hopefully this week we'll have her on the show just to give us a little bit of an update. There is, but there is an appetite, I think, for justice when it comes to these religious institutions and the harm that they've done to children, the harm that they've done to students, the harm that they've done to the adults that have been part of their organization for years. And I don't want to say don't know any better, but when you're born inside a religion like that is abusive, and and I'm talking about the Plymouth Brethren stuff, not the Legacy Christian Academy stuff, but it can be difficult to sort of find a way to weed or to take away the hard wiring that's already been established in many of these people's heads. But I think that the appetite for justice is getting bigger. It also does seem that the appetite for religious Christian extremism is also seemed to be getting bigger. I was surprised at that. In the early 2000s, there was, I was a big follower of the sort of new atheist movement, and people like Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris and all these guys, and they would talk a lot about how the fastest growing quote religious denomination was atheism and agnosticism. I don't know if that's true anymore because I see, with especially during the pandemic, there was a big sort of exposure of the undercurrent of radical Christian theology in this country that I was really surprised to see. And so I don't know if we're going backwards in that regard or not, but I see Richard Dawkins. Someone's commenting there. That's Richard Dawkins is another one. There is, but now it seems like the pandemic has sort of lifted the veil off of, like I said, an undercurrent in this country of radical Christian philosophy, and it's strange to me. It's like standing outside of an AA meeting. I don't know if you guys have ever been to an AA meeting. I have. I've been to 2. And it wasn't for me because of the higher power stuff. And I know there's people at home saying, well, you just got to look past the higher power stuff. I just couldn't do it. And don't get me wrong. AA, really good for a lot of people. A lot of people I know used AA and they were fine. But I was struck by how many people smoking outside that AA meeting, because everybody smokes in AA, it seems, were approaching me and being like, if it wasn't for Jesus, I probably wouldn't be able to get through. And again, I wasn't mocking them in my head. I was just like, yeah, that's not going to be what gets me through this, because whatever. But that sort of affinity with Jesus and everything expressed out loud and sort of promoted is something that I didn't think I would see without an AA meeting being in a close vicinity, and it just being sort of normal nowadays. Even people that I've been talking to for years, just in the digital sense, just all of a sudden in 2022, 2021, would start talking to me about Jesus, and I'm just like, you know who I am. I'm not going to be talking to you about Jesus. Like, oh, James, I thought maybe that this pandemic would have taught you something. Yeah. Taught me not to cough on people. It's not going to teach me to believe in something I don't believe in. But with Caitlin's situation and with the Plymouth Brethren stuff in Maple Creek, there is a new need for accountability when it comes to these institutions. And I'm just a passenger along for the ride, speaking to people like Caitlin and Cheryl and Richard Marsh and all those good people, to try to, lift the curtain and see if we can expedite some of this justice that should be shoveled into the mouths of these people who violate children in the name of God. And that is a fight that I don't think I'm ever going to stop pursuing. So given that, I thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you next time on Blackballed.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.